Hey guys, so today we're going to be doing a 89 to 91 LS400 / Celsior. This is going to be plug and play into an IS200, and in this case it is retaining the 4-speed automatic gearbox that came behind the 1UZ Non VVT-i. So let's get into it. Right, so as discussed, this is going to be an 89 to 91 LS400 / Celsior. It is going to be plug and play into an IS200 and is retaining the automatic gearbox that came behind the 1UZ. So what are we going to do today? A couple of things as per usual. First, we're going to go through the entire layout of the harness. Then we're going to jump into the testing, which is made up of two parts. So one with the engine not running and just the ignition on, and the other one with the engine actually running. So because it's a completely brand new harness, as you can see, first thing we're going to do is jump into the build photograph so you guys can see exactly what goes into making one of these harnesses. So let's do that now, and we'll be back in a second.
Break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life, I never miss, that's fact, taking big swings, push your hand to the bat, put me in the ring, you'll go out in a bag, cause I sing what I mean and I bring it to the mad light, ain't got time to kill, I got time to feel, I took the red pill, I know life's short so I wanna live real, but how's it supposed to feel?
Right, so now you've seen exactly what goes into building one of these, and I'll take a look at a couple of the sub harnesses that we build for them as well. Let's jump into the first thing that we're going to do, and that is the layout. So as I said, this is completely plug and play. So focusing now on the ECU box itself, we have our interface, which basically goes to your two plugs that remain in your IS200 after you remove the 1G engine. Okay, then you've got your ECU plug, so it's a 26 pin, I think it's a 24, 22, 16, and another 26. So please make sure you get those right. They are different keyways though, so you shouldn't be able to mix these up, but just make sure that you do get them right. Next up, we've got our device that's going to translate from analog to MPX to keep our gauges working as they should. And then we move on to the three interface body plugs, and that is your blue plug over here, your gray plug over there, and your black plug over there. Right, so that encompasses everything that's inside the ECU box. And remember, the ECUs do fit in, a little bit of a tight squeeze, but they do fit into there straight away. Moving along from there, we then come across your grommet, and your grommet goes into this little U-shaped space inside the ECU box over there. Obviously, our engine's a lot higher, so this is dangling up here. Coming straight out of your grommet there, we then have the first breakout, and that is going to your igniter. So remember, you have two igniters that go with every 1UZ Non VVT-i engine, and they need to be grounded. So you need to bolt them to a good earth on the chassis and body. Okay, and so that's your igniters over there. Moving along, and we come up to here where we're going to have a breakout and go into two major sections. So it's going to go completely around there, and it's going to break off to go around the front here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go around this section over here. Now these are designed long enough to actually come underneath here. So when you are pulling all of the stuff off to put everything back on again, you can actually run this underneath there. I've just got it over here for ease of use to get it on and off over here. So running along there, we have the breakout that goes to the cam sensor. So remember, Non VVT-i's have two cam sensors. You've got a cam sensor under there, and you've got a cam sensor over there. Okay. Then the harness comes down, and then it clips onto the metal frame that's in the section over there. So that's nice and straightforward. Then it comes down till it breaks out here, just behind where the coil lives on the side here. One obviously goes out to the coil again, and everything is labeled for you guys. So we shouldn't have any issues in finding everything and where it goes. Now, there are quite a few breakouts in here, so I'm going to try and see if I can squeeze it around, but basically we're going to go through them one by one. So the first one that's going to pop in, it's going to go down through this hole, down through over there, and that is going to be your crank sensor. Okay, so that is down there. Then we have your oil pressure, so that will also come through the hole over there, pop down over there, and then that's going to go to your oil pressure switch. That's just at the back of the oil filter housing over there. Okay. One that I haven't put through the hole, but it is designed to go through the hole, is the Lambda sensor. So that'll pop through there, come out over there, and then make its way down to your Lambda sensor, which is right over there. So you guys will remember from the standard harnesses on this particular side, which is the left bank, normally the oxygen sensor comes down from there, but it travels literally between the exhaust and the block. We bring it out of the front here so we can avoid any type of contact with the exhaust or any type of heat that's going to give us issues. Okay. Then the next thing that pops out is going to be your aircon pump. Okay, so that's going to go onto your aircon pump there. The system itself is taking care of the aircon. We are taking the AC request signal from inside the vehicle through here, and it's activating that, and you'll see that as part of the test that we do. All right, so that's pretty much everything here. So you've got aircon, we've got Lambda sensor, we've got oil pressure switch, we've got crank sensor, and then up at the top here, we've got your coil that plugs into over there. Right, so now that that's done, let's go back to where it broke out over here and let's make our way around there. So it's quite a long stretch where nothing pops out over here. And then at the back of the engine over there, you see there is actually a mounting point there, so you can actually mount it down there and keep it nice and tight. But we come to the back here, we're going to split out to quite a lot of things, so let's start going through them now. So the first one is going to be the ground, and that's on a little ring terminal there, and that's going to go directly onto the block using an M8 nut over there, which should be completely standard on your engine. Just be wary that the ring terminals that we use are not widely spaced. So if you have a look down here, you've got a hole over here, but it's quite a wide hole. So don't use that one down there. You want to use the one slightly up over there. Okay? Right, so that's the earth strap. The next one is going to be your gearbox harness. Now, as this is an auto, we are going to be running the 4-speed automatic gearbox. So it's going to come along down here. Then the first breakout on the gearbox section is going to go to your selector. Now, some of you will notice that this is not an 89 to 91 selector switch, but as Toyota did actually discontinue the connector for those particular selector switches, that's a selector switch, what we're doing now is we're fitting the much later sort of 3UZ, 2JZ, GE, VVT-i. We're fitting those ones because they bolt directly on. They've got a much newer plug, which is readily available off the shelf. And so that's what we're changing to now with this customer as well. At the same breakout point as that over there, we then have your first speed sensor. So this is going to go on. So imagine the gearbox is here. Selectors on that side over there. The NCO speed sensors over here. Then the harness carries on along the gearbox on this side. So it runs down this side basically and it goes over for the selector. Then it's going to carry on running down here and then we're going to have 3 sections breaking out here. We've got our 6-pin solenoid plug. So that's going to go on there. Again, everything is labeled for you, solenoid, etc. We then have SP2, which is your output speed sensor. And again, that's for the ECU itself. And then lastly, on the 89 to 91 and 92 to 94, they actually have a physical Hall effect style speed sensor on there. Now, we do wire this up, and the reason that we do wire it up is because, as you guys are aware, the IS200 gets its speed signal in the automatic vehicles from the ABS ECU, but in the manuals, it comes from the speed sensor. So in this particular case, we can assume that the customer is using an automatic IS200, therefore his speed would be coming from there. But we know you guys like to sell on these harnesses when you get bored of your projects. If he sells this on, he can sell it on to a person with a manual IS200 and they can fit everything in. And we've already wired it all there, so you can plug this straight into a manual IS200 and it would work exactly as you expect it to. Okay, so that is the gearbox harness section over there. Moving along, we've then got our sub harness that goes to our knock sensors. All right, so that goes underneath there. And I'm going to cut to some pictures now. You can see basically it goes inside there, goes into the starter motor, and then goes to your 2 knock sensors. And everything is labeled there for you as well. Okay, so that's the sub harness over there. Again, everything is labeled as sub, and sub on the other side over there as well. Then we have 2 that are sort of joined together, and that is going to be our ICS, or idle speed control. Some call it IACV, or idle air control valve. Anyway, same thing, different name. But that's your ISC and your injector sub harness. So again, that goes into the middle of the intake, and I'm going to cut to some pictures now. So you can see it goes in, comes out on the left bank for the injectors, goes out on the right bank for the injectors, goes straight down to the front, and then pops out for your idle speed control valve at the front there. Right, okay, so that's that section over there. So we've gone through all of that, and then the next section is what's going to pop around and carry on going around the back of the motor over there. Okay, so I'm going to quickly pop a round over here so we can carry on with what is going on now. Right, so just plug that in quickly. Right, so this one is going to run along the back over here, and then I just normally pop it through over there because you've got a mounting point over there. You've also got a mounting point over there if you can see it. All right, I've left the actual like air pipe and everything off so we can see a lot of it. Obviously you can see all the injectors down there, but again, they come from the middle. They don't actually come from the main engine harness itself. They're all subsidized off. Look underneath there and you'll see another breakout point sort of in the middle of the throttle, and that's going to break off to go to your TPS sensor. Okay, so again, that is your TPS sensor over there. So these are obviously designed for the other ones that have the second TPS sensor. That's actually for traction control, which is now no longer viable in this particular swap. So it's only the one sensor that we are using for TPS. Right, coming further along there, then we're going to break out here at the front. Again, there's quite a few things that come out here. I'm going to explain to you where they are. I'm going to try and show you as best I can. Unfortunately, with all these covers on the top, it's very difficult to see. But we have our coolant temp that's going to work for the gauge. Okay, so that is that little single wire sensor there where the black plug is over there. That is the one that's going to make the gauge work inside the vehicle. Then underneath there, you're going to see we've got a gray plug going on a green sensor there, and that is your coolant temperature for the ECU itself. Okay, then also coming underneath there, we've got our coil plug. So you can see there just above where my finger's pointing over there, there's your coil plug. And then if we move underneath there, you'll see there is your cam sensor for this particular right bank over here. Right, so also coming out here, we then break off and we come to the other breakout point, which is over there. This is designed to bring your mass airflow sensor plug out. So again, that is really straightforward. That is then going to plug into the mass airflow sensor as it comes out the air pipe. So in this case, obviously the big aluminium ones is the ones that they use on these particular engines. Then it's going to go down a little bit further. It's going to break out over there and it's going to go to the alternator plug. So in this particular case, the customer should normally have the big round ones, but obviously someone's upgraded the alternator, so he does have the oval shaped one. So again, we have got a connection for that. And as per usual, obviously this itself is actually a 3UZ alternator. So these do bolt onto a 1UZ block, and obviously they have the newer generation with the 4-pin plugs. So again, if you ever need to change over and that's the only one you can get his hands on, you guys can call us up. We can get one of these pretty much made the same day out in the post and on its way to you. And then the last little section over there is going to be your Lambda sensor. So again, that's going to pop down along the block over there. Again, staying out of the way of the exhaust so you guys can avoid any heat damage on the harness. Okay, so remember, try and keep everything away from the exhaust, but also away from the belt. So you want to keep it around about there, essentially. All right, so that is the complete layout of the harness. There is two other things that obviously you're required to do as the customer. Number one is going to be fitting your main power starter cable. So again, with every engine that you buy, you should, if someone's taken it out, you should have this thick main starter cable, okay? Now, usually on the 1UZ non-VVT-Is and the 1UZ VVT-I actually, those cables are quite long. They had a tendency to fit the battery sort of here inside the engine bay. So normally, as you can see on this particular one, which is obviously from a 1UZ non-VVT-I, you can see this is a massively long cable. So it was designed to run all the way down there, all the way through there, all the way along the block, all the way up to the front and about here. So you guys can feel free, obviously, to chop that short, crimp another terminal on, take it to the positive of your battery. Right, the other thing that you're going to want to retain is your alternator sub harness. So on your 1UZ non-VVT-I, there's a harness that runs from your alternator. It runs underneath the subframe and it popped up the other side over there to go to the fuse box and everything. And it had like your oil pressure switch from that side and had your AC wiring in as well. Obviously that's all part of your main engine harness now, but this is where you're going to find it. Inside there is going to be your thick cable that runs from your alternator. So that's over there. You run it down underneath along the subframe, up the other side exactly like I've done here. Sorry, my voice is squeaky there. Up to there, and then it's going to bolt into your fuse box over there. Little M10 nut over there, and that screws down. Now, I do advise connecting it there for a multitude of reasons. Main one being, it's easy, it's convenient, and also it is fused properly. So you've got a 120 amp fuse there, so if anything goes wrong with the alternator cable, especially as you are running it underneath the subframe, if anything was to happen and it was to short, that fuse is going to pop and it's going to protect your vehicle. So again, do go there. Obviously the starter doesn't go through any type of fuse at all. It comes straight out of there and goes there, but it's such a short run. Chances of anything happening are very, very slim. All right. So those are your two main powers. You've got your alternator main power, you've got your starter motor main power. So those are the ones that you're connecting to both here and here. Now then, earths. So your standard battery is going to have a cable that looks exactly like this one over here. It's going to run from battery negative down, bolt underneath to the chassis, run down, and then it actually went to the block directly. Now you want to retain that earth and just go straight to the block with that earth. So if you have a look here, should look something like that. Obviously I've bent mine a couple of times, but anyway, you can see it's coming out of the bottom of the battery there, and then it's going down. So again, that one you can then take straight to your block, and that's your main earth for your starter motor and all of that type of stuff. Now then, on the back, on your firewall here, especially on the right-hand drive models, you had a vacuum boost line that ran all the way across over there. And most importantly, there's a bolt somewhere about there, and it bolted onto there and kept the metal tube line in place. And on there, what you'll also notice is there is a standard Lexus earth. So you can take it literally from the cylinder head. So remember, you've got a few holes here. You've got that hole there, you've actually got that hole down there, and you've got that hole over there. But you can take a nice little sort of earth strap, if you know what I mean. Like, there should be one going from your gearbox to your chassis leg as well. But you can take one of those, take it straight from there and straight to your connection there. And you can either do it from here or there. Doesn't really matter which one you do it. But basically your harness and everything is earthed through the cylinder head. So if you take it from there to there, you should end up with a really decent earth. Okay, so those are the three earths that I normally recommend. Is the main one going down to the block, the one going from the cylinder head to the firewall over there in its dedicated place, and obviously the one going from the gearbox to the chassis leg. If you've got all those three connected, you should be 100%. And you shouldn't run into any issues at all. Obviously you can see here, I'm just using the earth directly from the battery to the block. That's all I'm using, and I don't run into any issues here. So having those extra two is going to be mighty helpful, and just make sure that you are 100%. Right, so that is the complete layout. Hopefully that's super helpful to Zane, who's going to be fitting this all in his vehicle. It's really, really straightforward. Everything is labeled up for you guys, so you shouldn't have any issues when you are laying it down. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pop off. We're going to carry out all the testing of the harness. And then when we come back, we're going to be doing the testing with the ignition on, and we're testing with the engine actually running. So bear with me a second and I'll be back. Right guys, so now we're going to jump into the testing of the engine harness on the actual vehicle itself. Well, in this case, my half cut. So as I said earlier, two sections, one with just the ignition on and the other one with the engine actually running. So what are we going to be testing? Now, as it's a plug and play, there's some obviously unique tests for an IS200. So the first thing we're going to be testing is the ambient temperature. So what I mean by that, basically, if we come over here, you're going to see that there is the outside temperature that's displayed there. Now, caveat with this. This is not a sense temperature. In other words, it's not connected to the actual outside temperature sensor. It's going to display 18 degrees Celsius or whatever degrees Fahrenheit that it is equivalent to. And it will stay at that all the time. It's not going to change. What we did is we just got it to display that continuously, so you didn't get the annoying E or the 2 dots, which you normally get when obviously you remove the standard ECU. So that is that. Again, that is how that one works. Next up is your check engine light. So we're going to pop over to here and you're going to see the check engine light appearing on there. I'll probably turn off the light that I've got shining there. Next up is oil pressure light. So again, we're focusing on the bottom down here. Now, obviously, you'll notice we're not going to check the alternator light. The actual device itself is sensing battery voltage. If the voltage drops below a certain voltage, it will cause the alternator light to come on. Okay, and obviously we do test that, so we know that that does work. It's just very difficult, obviously, now that I've had the engine running, the battery's fully charged, and I can't turn on lights or anything like that to bring the power down very, very quickly. Okay. Right, so that is that. Then after that, we're going to test the AC relay. So what I mean by that, basically what I mean is I'm going to press the AC button inside there, and you are going to hear the AC magnetic clutch relay working over there. So that's to make sure that that system is doing what it's supposed to. Next, we're going to come over to the selector, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it in reverse. Now, obviously, this is an auto. I've got manual clocks in there. The reason I've got manual clocks in there is obviously because the gear position indicator came via the MPX system, so that is no longer going to function. But what I'm looking for is the fact that when I put it into reverse from park, so remember, it's park, reverse, neutral, drive to an L. So in this case, when I go to reverse, I'm going to hear that beep that we're all familiar with on the IS200 manuals. That's going to tell me that the reverse circuit is complete. And when he does put it into reverse, his reverse lights are going to come on when he does that. So that's perfect. As I said, these are an auto, but they do have the same 3-wire Hall effect style speed sensor that comes on the IS200 manual. So as I usually do, I'm going to be using my device to input a speed signal, make sure that device is working. And again, this customer, Zane, is probably going to have an auto IS200. It's going to make no odds or sods to him because his speed is going to be coming from his ABS. But like I said, this is for future proofing in case he wants to pass it on to somebody else. That's pretty much all the testing with the key on, basically ignition on. Next up, we're going to be moving on to the engine actually running, and that we're going to be looking at the starter circuit. So what I mean by that, I've written starter circuit and selector switch. So With autos, it shouldn't start unless it's in park or neutral. So what I'm going to basically do is I'm going to go over to there. I'm going to change it from park, not to reverse, but I'll go past neutral, I'll go into drive. I'm going to turn the key and make sure that it doesn't start. Then I'm going to go back, I'm going to stick it back in park. I'm going to turn the key. If the engine turns over, we know that the selector switch and everything is wired correctly, so the vehicle will not start unless it's in park or neutral. Once we've turned the key, obviously we would have started the engine. So our next step is going to be moving back over here and going over to our tacho, so we can see that we are getting a rev kind of signal coming through from there. Now then, on the IS200s and the IS300s, they're obviously looking for a 6-cylinder signal. These 1UZ non-VVT-Is and all that, they give out a 4-cylinder signal. Why do they do that? Well, basically they've split it into 2 banks of 4. That's why you have 2 igniters. That's why you have 2 distributors. That's why you have 2 coils. Okay, it's effectively 2 4-cylinders working together. So when you get your rev counter signal, it's coming from one of the igniters, and that is only supplying 4 cylinders, hence your 4-cylinder signal. What you'll also notice is on the 1UZ VVT-i and the 3UZ, even though they moved to fully sequential ignition, they actually still retain that legacy item. So a 1UZ VVT-i and a 3UZ VVT-i also give out a 4-cylinder signal from the ECU. Okay, the signal doesn't come from the ECU. In this case, it's coming from the igniter, but our device is then converting that from a 4-cylinder to a 6-cylinder, so your dash stays happy. All right, once we've checked the tacho out, we're going to pop over and I'm going to unplug each injector one by one. What am I looking for? I'm looking to make sure that each cylinder misfires when I do so. That is making sure that all of the cylinders are working as they should do, both sparking and injecting as well. All right. Once I've done that, then we're going to pop over back to the dash, and you're probably going to see it anyway when we do the tacho, but we're going to make sure that the coolant temperature is working so we can actually see the needle moving off empty or cold and going up to halfway. Obviously, I've run it up, and one thing I will say is I am going to put a link into adjusting the coolant temperature sensor. Our little device allows you to adjust it. So remember, this is an analog device, and the reason I say analog is we're actually feeding analog signals to it, and it's converting it to multiplex, which the dash can understand. And they were originally created to pretty much fit any engine you want in. So effectively, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really care what engine is in here. It could be a diesel, it could be whatever you wanted. The device just needs a temperature signal, and because we might encompass different temperature sensors, we've made it adjustable so you guys can adjust it accordingly. I adjusted here. I've got my radiator, I've got a fan switch on there, so when the fan comes on twice, I then adjust it to sit dead bang in the middle, and so therefore it should be accurate by the time you get it, but it's always open for fine adjustment if you want to carry that out. Then next up, what we're going to do is we're going to go look at the codes. Okay, so we're going to tell you how to read the codes. It's going to be very simple, just requires a paper clip or your missus hair clip. And what I'm going to do is, if there are no codes, I'm going to create one and I'm going to show you exactly how to read them. Okay, right, so that's pretty much it. That is what we're going to do today. So I'm going to jump straight into the ignition part, and I'm going to do that by turning the key on. So as you said, it's completely plug and play. So I'm going to take the key, flick it on there, and the first thing we want to do is we want to go over to the ambient temperature. So let's have a look over here, and I can see there 18 degrees. Okay, so that is fantastic, and we know that's going to display that all the time. Check engine light, we've got the check engine light, and we've got the oil pressure light. Okay, just a words up, the orange oil level, that bulb you have to remove, and the TRC bulb you have to remove, because obviously those systems will no longer function on the IS200 because they're not physically present on the 1UZ non-VVT-i. Well, the oil level is, but that would have to communicate to the ECU, and then it would go via multiplex, which our device would intercept, etc. So they do work on the 1UZ VVT-i and the 3UZs, just not on the 1UZ non-VVT-is. Okay, right, so that's check engine light, oil pressure. Let's go over to the AC relay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the AC button, and we're going to listen out for the relay clicking. And it's decided to have a storm. Right, fantastic. Okay, so that working exactly as expected to. The AC button is giving a signal to our device. Our device is outputting a signal to the 80-magnetic clutch relay, and that's then activating. So perfect. Now then, let's move over to the selector switch. So as I said, all I'm looking for in this particular case is just the reverse. Now, with these particular ECUs, especially the older ones, there's not that many signals going to the ECU. So you'll see we've got a couple of empty slots here that are actually blocked off there. So all I'm going to basically do is, at the moment it's in park, I'm going to go straight to reverse. And you can hear straight away, there's a little buzzer. As I go back into park, there it's gone. So now I know when Zane puts it in reverse, his reverse lights are going to come on because I know the whole entire reverse circuit in the car is connected and functioning as we expect it to. Right, so that is the selector switch and reverse. Moving on to the speedo. So again, all I'm going to basically do is I'm going to feed power and signal to the speed sensor connector, and that's going to pop up on the dash and make it shoot up. And then I know that this speed sensor is fully connected and working. Okay, right, so as per usual, I'm just going to put it into test mode. And while I'm doing that, just remember that a Hall effect sensor has basically 3 wires. One is 12 volts, one is ground, and the other is signal. So doing this test the way I do it allows me to do a couple of things. Number one, I can test that the 12 volts and the ground are all working. I can also test that the signal works. So if I just hit it there, and straight away you can see that the speedo's gone up. And as I let go, it goes away. Pop it back in again. Let it go. Fantastic. Okay, so that is the speedo now. So that is all done. So next step that I need to do now is I need to get it up and running. We do have a bit of coolant temperature on there, so we should be enough to get started straight away, but I'm going to get my ear defenders and everything. I'll be back in a second, so bear with me. Okay, so we're jumping straight back into it now. We're going to move on to the actual engine running. So quick recap. Starter circuit. So again, I'm going to change it from park to neutral, or not neutral. I'm going to change it from park to drive. Try and start it. It's not going to start. Move it back to park, then it's going to start. Once it starts, we're going to pop back, look at our tacho, make sure that's working. I'm going to slide over and start removing each injector one by one. You're going to hear the engine then misfire, and then I'm going to pop back, and hopefully that coolant temp has risen a little bit from where it is now. And then what we'll do is we'll move into diagnostic codes and get you guys clued up on all of that. So ear defenders on, and let's do this. Right, so as I said, I'm going to pop the selector switch from park, reverse, neutral, drive. Rightio. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to turn the key. Absolutely nothing. Dead to the world. And let's pop her back into park. Rightio. And let's go into 1, 2, 3. Okay, so there she's firing up. We've got our takeoff signal, so we're super happy with that. Let's move over to the injectors now. So starting on this side, this is going to be the right bank, so that's going to be 2, 4, 6, and 8. Let's start with number 2. Move over to number 4, which is down there. You have to trust me. And there's number 6. And there's number 8. Let's go over to the other side now. And we've got number 1, number 3, number 5, and number 7. Fantastic. Okay. Right. That's all the injectors done. Coolant temp probably not going to go up a whole lot. Anyway, we've got the signal there, so I am happy with that. We're going to leave it there. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to go look at the codes. In order to do that, I'm going to quickly take the air defenders off, and I'm going to shut the car down. Okay. Rightio. So diagnostic codes. Right. So this is an old non VVT-i, so it's what we call an OBD1 system. Obviously, nobody's got the actual connections, usually only a very select few. So what we've done for you guys is we've given you a nice easy way to be able to read the codes with just a paper clip, or like I said, your Mrs. hair clips that are usually lying around in your car. So first of all, depending on your IS200 is going to be depending where you can read it from. Earlier models, so like 98 to 2001, you can actually read it from 2 places. The later models from 2001 onwards, obviously there's only 1 place you can do it from. So where are they? Number 1 is the OBD2 connector. So that's your OBD2 connector. Obviously in this case, you'd have all the plastics here. That would be dangling down. It's where you plug in your OBD2 or your TechStream or however you used to read your codes on your old 1GFE. Now then, on that diagnostic plug, there is pin 4 and 5 are both grounds, and then pin 13 is what they call TC or trouble codes. Okay, so you can either bridge pin 5 and 13 or 4 and 13, because 5 and 4 are both grounds, to TC. What it'll do is put the engine into diagnostic mode. Okay, now then, if you are 2001 and earlier, well, again, it's 2001 sort of the crossover year for these really. What you're going to have is this little diagnosis port on the front of your engine. Okay, so if you look inside here, it is very, very, very sparse. There's only literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a join over there. So this is really, really old legacy stuff left over, and they've narrowed it down to a very, very tiny, select few amount of things that are actually in there. Right, so what do we want to do in this particular case? We are going to grab a wire, and then we are going to bridge to terminals. So bear with me a second. I thought I had a wire right here. Where is it gone? Right, bear with me a second. I'm going to pop back with a wire. I thought it was here. Let me get that and be back with you. Right, okay, I did have the wire. It just fell off of here. It was on the floor. So what I've done is I found it, got it back again. And what I've done in the meantime for you guys, just to make sure we do have a code, I have actually removed the coolant temp sensor. It's incredibly difficult for you to see, but you can see that full green sensor now where we did have the gray plug on there. So what I'm looking for now is code 22, which is basically engine coolant temperature sensor. Because it's not connected to anything, it basically goes open circuit, and the ECU should recognize that, and it should give me code 22. So on this particular one, I don't know if I went through this, I'll go through it again, but on this one, we're looking for pin E1, which is this top one over here. So I'm going to put that into there, so you can see that one over there. And then TC, which again is labeled in there, but it's basically this one in the middle over here. And as I bridge those together, let me just quickly straighten out that wire. I'm going to move over to the dash now, because as I bridge those together, you're going to see the security light's going to go out, and then it's going to go 1, 2, 1, 2, and long pause, and then it's going to go 1, 2, and then 1, 2. And you see it's going to repeat itself over and over and over again. Okay. As soon as I pull that out, you're going to see straight away the check engine light's going to go straight back on as per normal. Okay, right. Obviously, when you saw it was running, it was no check engine light on, because obviously there's no codes that are going to cause a check engine light in this particular case. So again, we will give you a sheet with all of that. So for example, mass airflow 2431, 24 being intake air temperature, 31 being mass airflow sensor. Okay, 22 is the coolant temperature sensor, so that's that one of those. Then you'll have 21, which I think is the left bank, and 28, which is the right bank Lambda sensor. So again, if you get those two codes, those are there. I'm just naming a few, but yeah, we'll give you the sheet so you've got the whole load down there. So that is how you carry out diagnostics. Now then, there is one other important thing that happens when you do bridge those two terminals, and it's part of the diagnostics mode that you put the ECU into, but it locks the timing at 10 degrees, okay? So you can see down here, we've got a mark on our crank pulley. We've got 0, 5, 10, and 15 that we've actually painted nice and white so you guys can really, really see it when we're doing it. So it locks the timing at 10 degrees. You can quickly pull off this cover, put your lead on a timing light around cylinder 1 coil lead, plug lead, and go over here and you can check the timings at 10 degrees, okay? So if you're a tooth or two out, especially with the early engines like 89 to 94, they're a non-interference engine, so you could be like 5, 6 teeth out and the engine is probably still going to run, and obviously you're not going to hit anything, so you're not really going to realize it. So if you're unsure of the timing and you think there may be a problem with it, that is by far the quickest and easiest way to check. Bridge the terminals either here or in the car, grab your timing light, put it on lead number 1, check with your timing light, make sure you're at 10 degrees. If you're not, then you can pull the other covers off and so on and check your actual physical timing. But before you take everything apart, it's a really nice, quick, easy test. If you have a timing light, I suppose is the only problem with that one. Right, so that is everything done here. So obviously we want to get this packaged up and off to Zane so he can get in his car and get everything running. Thank you guys for watching as usual. If you do have any questions, you can message us down below. And just so that you're aware, this entire harness has been built for the customer with them supplying nothing at all. So again, we can take existing harnesses to remove connectors to save a bit of money. If it's a really old 1989 LS400, chances are we're probably not going to be able to save a lot of connectors. And so in this case, he's opted just to go a brand new harness. We supplied all brand new connectors. We do have some secondhand where they are available. But yeah, so if you guys are worried about shipping stuff to us and then back to you again, you don't have to worry. All of our harnesses that we can make from scratch with nothing supplied from you guys. I wasn't sure whether everyone was aware of that or not. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys. We will see you again soon. And we are going to move over to a Link ECU now on a 1UZ Non VVT-i. So let me get that all set up and I'll see you in a second. Bye-bye.